We are back. I am Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined by Jason Mackey. We're going to talk a little bit of Pirates now, Jason. There's not, in some ways, there's not a whole lot to talk about because they're not making moves. In some ways, there's a whole lot to talk about because of the lack of moves. Let me attack it this way. What is the biggest issue for the lack of free agent spending this offseason? I don't think anyone expected them to go out and spend $150 million or do anything crazy. I think there was an expectation that you could at least match what you did last offseason, make a big, somewhat substantial one-year investment in Aroldis Chapman and some of these other guys. And to this point, they haven't done even what they did a year ago. Is this a function of the TV money finally starting to take a bite? Because I look, historically, we know that the Steelers, when attendance goes up, when revenue at the gate goes up, that's when they feel, content to spend more, whether it's a ton. They just do move in that direction. What do you look at as the primary reason for the way things have unfolded to this point?
Yeah, I'm baffled by it, Adam. I really am. I mean, I went into this offseason thinking that, one, there would be substantive changes. There have not been. Two, that they would at least spend some money to support Paul Skenes. They haven't. I mean, I've lately been having the conversation in my head, like, they can't go into this season with like Andrew McCutchen and Adam Frazier being the two biggest offensive additions. Can they? Like, it's
McCutchen's not even an addition, really.
I know, but like technically free agent wise, like those are the only additions they've made. Otherwise, they're talking all internal improvement. And I agree. Like, I give them the benefit of the doubt a lot of times that, like, hey, look, like, they're not going to spend a ton. Internal improvement matters, whatever. Like, if you're losing me, that's not great. And I guess where I'm going with that is that they can't be done. They can't be done. There are guys out there. You can make your team better right now. We just saw it with Austin Hayes. Why they didn't sign him, I don't know. Maybe there's another plan in place, another thing coming down the pike. I certainly hope so. But I mean, we're talking about an offense that was among the worst in Major League Baseball last season, Adam. And we're going to present to our fans that Andrew McCutchen coming back and Adam Frazier externally are going to fix the problem. And then we're magically going to get that much more from Henry Davis, Jackson, Spencer Horwitz. I guess I shouldn't discount Mr. Horwitz, who I actually think could be better than a lot of the narrative surrounding the acquisition there. Like, I think a lot of people are kind of dunking on them and him, and I think they should give him a little bit more of a chance. I'm not saying he's a savior. I'm not saying what they've done is great. I don't like it, but like, he can be an okay player. Anyway, that's a tough case to present, that they're going to be better offensively around what I think is going to be a really good pitching staff. I think there has to be something else. I do.
Well, let me ask you this, Jason. Is there any world where you wonder if they're gearing up to throw something at Paul Skenes to not, you're not going to get the guy for the rest of his career. I think we all know that in a small market. But is there a world where they say, hey, we can throw 200-ish million at you. We're going to buy you out through age 28 or 29. And then we're going to let you hit free agency when you're still, within your prime and you can still get a huge contract. And that maybe that is part of the thinking here, and that they can't spend their way, it may be, into this team being good unless you get that level of internal improvement. So rather than throw $40 million out the door, on some guys who aren't going to be here in a year, you're holding back a little bit, A, to give to Paul Skenes, and B, to see how, what you have inside develops.
I would love it, but no. I've never heard from either side, people surrounding Skenes and people in the organization, that there's a possibility for a marriage here. Anytime, a long-term marriage, meaning like a long-term contract that you're talking about. Now, I hear it a lot from fans and on podcasts and on radio shows and that sort of thing about people, can they get this done? Is this something that's going to happen? The Pirates should do that. Like all of this external talk, great. Nobody I've ever talked to internally has propped this up as something that would be realistic. It has always been, they're going to use Paul Skenes for as long as they can. Paul Skenes is going to get the free agency and make a metric, ton of money from somebody else. And I don't even disagree with that. Like, if I'm Paul, that's probably what I'm doing. If I'm the Pirates, yeah, I wish they'd spend more money too, but that's probably what they're doing. Like, the sport's just not set up for them to spend $60 million a year on a pitcher. And I don't think it's smart for Skenes to tether himself to a place that, let's be honest, hasn't proven recently that it can be a consistent winner. And Paul wants to win. And I think more than anything, he wants to, at the earliest possible date, play for a winning franchise. And I think he really hopes that it's here. In a weird way, I do think it can be here. Like if they can score enough runs, Adam, I know this is sort of a backwards take compared to what we were just saying. I don't think this team is going to be terrible. I think they can win more than 76 games, which makes it all the more befuddling that there hasn't been more additions on the offensive side, certainly. But anyway, with the Skenes long-term contract, I just don't see it working out in desire, money, anything like that. I wish, believe me, I wish, but I don't see it.
Well, and I think my concern with that would be, Jason, that you get another year behind you, you're another year closer in terms of Paul Skenes. I think the best argument you have to him to keep him and is to give him that guarantee of like, we're going to give you $250 million here. So no matter what happens in your career, you're going to have at least gotten that, and kind of it's an insurance policy for him, right? Is that you got a guaranteed payday locked in. The closer you get to free agency, the less leverage I think the club has, no matter what happens. I mean, you could go out and I think make the NLCS this season, and I think that underlying math is still a problem for them.
I don't disagree with you, Adam, but we're having one conversation where their biggest external free agent addition on the offensive side is Adam Frazier. And then on the other side, we're saying, hey, well, I mean, you could give him $250,000 now. Like they can't sign a guy for $4 million. How do we get
I think that's why I think it's why you look at it and say, like, are they trying to save money thinking that this team, like, okay, maybe it could be good, but I don't think we have seen enough from anything, anywhere, at any point in time from this franchise to believe that what they have in-house is going to get them into a playoff spot. And maybe it will, and then maybe you can have that conversation later on. But I think there's a reticence that I would understand to say, we're going to go all in with the group that we have and spend a ton of money. And then, if those guys, if the trend lines that we have been seeing continue, this team is still not going to be any kind of serious threat.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. They're going to have to disprove them to do that. And I think what the Pirates have shown us, Adam, honestly, and people will disagree with this, and I understand the frustration with it, is they need young guys to come up and produce, and they need it to be homegrown. The sad part of it is they haven't done a good enough job with that stuff. They haven't done a good enough job drafting, development, internationally, all that stuff. But when the Pirates were good in 13, 14, 15, what was a hallmark of that? They got guys internationally, they drafted them, they developed them, they brought up a core, took advantage while they were still cheap. What they need to do is figure that out this time and, get those guys to come up and produce on young contracts. I don't know why I'm getting 400 text messages. I don't know if that can come through, but somebody is trying to reach me urgently.
Well, we'll try to wrap this up quickly here, Jason. I did have a question for you about Ben Cherington. Is he behaving like a guy whose job is on the line here? Because I think he seems pretty comfortable with his belief that he'll be back around in 26 unless this is a total disaster this season.
I don't think so.
I've never seen no, go ahead. I'll just let you riff on that.
Yeah, no, I don't think Ben's comfortable. I don't think Shelton's comfortable. I don't think anybody's comfortable over there. I know that might be how it comes off externally because they're not doing much. That's one reason why I think there has to be something else ahead, because I very much think that both of these guys are, on the line. Their jobs are on the line here, and they should be. They haven't made enough progress. I don't think the organization is happy with where it's at right now. I mean, it has a funny way of showing that, right? Like if you don't think you're happy with where you're at and you're behind schedule, which I agree, change something, spend something, do something, show people that desire. But I guess if you want to evaluate Cherington based on his behavior, I guess you can say he handles himself like somebody who's comfortable. Just from talking to people over there, Adam, I don't think he's comfortable. I don't think he should be comfortable. I think the inactivity is more due to, maybe their budgetary constraints, how much Ben Cherington has available. Maybe there's frustration on his end. I wouldn't doubt that, but I'd also say what he's been allowed to spend and what he's been allowed to do trade-wise, draft-wise hasn't been good enough as well. So I don't know. I guess my point and why I cut you off, and I'm sorry to do that, is just that I don't think he's comfortable. I don't think he should be comfortable.
So how does that manifest from here? I mean, you said you think they can't be done. What does can't be done look like for you? And how aggressive do you think he might be at the trade deadline, regardless of where the Pirates are? And here's my concern, Jason, is that if you got a guy in a desperate situation, sometimes you end up with the Matt Morris trade, right? and you hamstring yourself with a deal because a general manager is trying to save his job. Are the safeguards in place that if this isn't working, that Bob Nutting is not going to let Ben Cherington take these wild swings to save himself? Or how do you view that situation?
Well, it's a weird scenario to get there, Adam, right? Like you're saying the trade deadline, if this doesn't go well, right? Like how would Ben handle himself at the trade deadline if they're like very clearly out of it? Is that what I wouldn't say very clearly
out of it, but I'd say in a similar place to last season when you're not really in a commanding spot for a playoff berth.
But they added last year, theoretically.
Yes.
They didn't subtract. I mean, if they're 2 games over at I forget what they were. They were 2 games over through 100 games. They were close at the All-Star break and obviously in it reasonably so at the deadline. If all of that repeats itself, I think you'll probably see a similar kind of deadline. They might add a little bit more, I would hope. I mean, if they're far out of it and you're looking at this like there's no hope in the season, I don't think we see Cherington in place making those decisions. Like I think at that point, Cherington and Shelton are probably gone. I don't see how they could be here if the Pirates are out of contention. Like they need to win games. If they don't win games, and I know for externally, people look at this and say, well, if you want to win games, why don't you spend money? Which is fair. But like I'm telling you, sort of some of the internal thinking, like if they don't win games, heads are gonna roll. I don't like that term, but like, I think there are going to be consequences if they're very much out of it and not competitive this year. Is what I'm trying to say.
Well, that'll be interesting to watch play out. Jason, we're close to spring training here, so I think we can talk a little more nuts and bolts baseball, but I think for our first podcast like this, it was good to kind of get into the big picture. Yep. I'm going to let you check your text messages. Everyone else, please.
We're good. We're good.
Oh, you're good? Yeah, all right. No, I'm going to close the show out anyway, Jason, and say, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the show. We really appreciate having you along. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. It really helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. Jason, you're going to be back Saturday. Is there anything you want to tease?
Still working on guests, but I feel confident saying that it's going to be a voice that you've all seen and heard a bunch, and it will be a solid conversation. I don't have confirmation from said guest yet, but I know who I'm shooting for, and it's going to be one of many in that vein that I think people are going to be happy to hear from this person. They haven't heard from him a whole bunch in this setting recently. That's cryptic.
Awesome. Well, we'll check that out, Jason, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.